of October.
Incredible.
Yes.
So as you're talking about the white, we could just jump in, I think, and start tasting it. Anybody who has their bottle of white who would like to join us with the tasting. What we have in our glasses today is the 2021. We were just talking about the 22 harvest, because that's what you'll have in the cellar. But the 21 was quite an interesting vintage as well, because it was a challenging vintage, wasn't it, 2021?
Yes. 2021, in Bordeaux, we have frozen at the beginning of the year. It's not a lot of grapes because of the freeze.
Oh, you had some frost.
Yes, frost.
You had frost. There was bad frost across France, effectively, in the beginning of 2021.
Of April.
Okay, and so that dropped your yields.
And then we have only grapes on the top of the hill.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But when we begin the picking grapes at beginning of September, it was a later vintage than 2020 or 2022. And we have some very interesting acidity.
Okay.
Very fresh aromas. And today, when you test it, the 2021 is very, very interesting smelling. And if you want to speak, Christophe?
Yeah. Finally, this vintage 21 is really a good surprise, because for me, it's a surprise. But it could be a 22, in fact. You don't feel this wine have already one year.
Yes, it's very fresh.
It's still fresh, crispy, zesty, and it's an excellent wine if you want food pairing with seafood, appetizers, and certainly you can keep 1 year more. It's certainly possible when you test now, because the freshness is still here. So certainly possible to keep this wine 1 year more, if you are patient.
Yes, and you can keep it because we choose to have a screw cap.
Yes.
Here on all our white wines, and in some of our red wines, we use screw cap. And for aromas, it's very interesting to have a screw cap.
You're keeping the wine, keeping the oxygen
longer
away, and keeping the wine really fresh. Absolutely. 2021, as you were saying, started off a challenging vintage. You had frost issues. It lowered yields. The middle of the summer was quite cool as well, but then you had warmer near the harvest, which extended the growing season. And you have this wonderfully aromatic, fresh, but not in any way green in its character. It has a lovely balanced freshness to it. And absolutely, you could keep this wine easily for another year, as Chris said, if you have the patience. And a perfect wine, exactly, to pair with salads, light fish and seafood type dishes, to drink on its own as an aperitif. Serve this chilled, but not too cold. A lot of people serve their wines right out of the fridge, and the fridge is 4 degrees. So I always say you can, but if you just leave it 10 minutes and just let it warm up just a tiny bit, you're going to get so much more out of the aromas of a lovely Sauvignon Blanc from Bordeaux like this. So this is a wine that's completely unoaked. Do you want to tell me just a little bit about the winemaking process for this wine?
Yes. For the winemaking process, we press it. We pick up the grape very early in the morning. We have fresh grape, low temperature, and then we press with a special press with nitrogen.
Okay, and that's just to make sure you're protecting the aromas, that there's no oxygen contact.
We take up all the oxygen.
Okay.
Only nitrogen and carbonic gas.
Okay.
To keep all this. After we make the alcoholic fermentation in low temperature between 15 and 18 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
During between 2 and 3 weeks.
Okay.
After the alcoholic fermentation, we keep all the wine on the lid, and we mix the lid and the wine during 8 months.
Okay, so this
6
stays
or 8 months. Sorry. And after, we filter the wine and we put it in bottle.
Okay, so you're really looking for a very fresh expression.
Yes, the aging for the white dry wine, it's quite long. In Bordeaux, you can have an aging of 2 months only. But for me, when I have longer aging, it's more interesting to keep it. Because we send the wine in July or August for us, and I prefer to have longer aging.
Absolutely. So Jean-Christophe just mentioned an interesting point about the longer aging and on the lees. So I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with that concept, but the idea of keeping the wine in contact with the yeast once it's finished its fermentation, the fine yeast. If you keep it in contact with the wine and stir it occasionally, bâtonnage they call it, you can have a lovely sort of a couple of different effects. It can prolong the freshness in a wine, but it can also give a lot of
concentration too.
Yeah, a lot of texture, a lot of roundness, almost a creamy aspect to a wine. So you'll see a lot of fine wines mentioned being aged on their lees. And if you're wondering what that is, that's what that's all about. And this is especially for a white. When you don't want to have an oak influence, you really want to remain on the freshness and the fruit personality. Aging on the lees is a wonderful way to add texture and weight to the wine.
It's new in Bordeaux. We make this since 20 years old about. At the beginning, they do this in Burgundy or in Vallée-la-Loire, on Muscadet, like this.
But it's a wonderful, I mean, I think it just adds so much to the wine because Sauvignon Blanc is so wonderfully expressive, but it can be very lean on the palate. And so you're bringing, with the Semillon addition and with the lees aging, you're just bringing that added weight and texture, which is so lovely. If anybody has any questions, feel free to just type them into the chat, or even if you wanted to just jump out and ask a question, I think that's okay as well. So any questions, please feel free. I'm sure Jean-Christophe and Chris would be very happy to answer any of your questions, even if you wanted extra food pairings or anything, but I think we've mentioned a few. If we were going to move on to one of the reds, which order? I put them in the Merlot first.
The Petit Marine.
Yeah.
That's the first time.
So this is a new wine. So if anybody has the Petit Marine with them today from their box and would like to taste along with us, we're pouring the Petit Marine. And you started this in 2019, this new range.
Yes, it was 2019, yes.
And what was the idea behind the Petit Marine range of wines?
In fact, Petit Marine at the beginning was created for United States market.
Okay.
And in California. And the idea was the mixing between the love of the sea and the love of the vineyard. Because when Jean-Christophe and his sisters was young.
You see the sailboats.
Yeah, the father of them brings them to the sea, brings them to the vineyard. And this wine is a tribute of this love of sea and love of the vineyard created by the father of Jean-Christophe for his kids.
And so the in terms of the wines that you selected for this range, and it really is a lovely, really a pretty label. This is, if not 100%, it's an 85%, I believe. Merlot,
no,
the idea is really
100% Merlot.
100%. So the idea is really to focus on a single grape expression, which is really, as I was saying earlier on the call, this isn't something you often see from Bordeaux. Bordeaux is all about blending. And it's interesting to get a sense of what Merlot, which is actually the #1 grape. A lot of people think Cabernet Sauvignon when they think of Bordeaux, but by far Merlot is the most planted red grape in Bordeaux. And this is on a clay soils, I believe, which is so well suited to Merlot. So what were you looking for in making this Merlot? What style did you want to sort of convey, get across to?
I have different Merlot in the property. It's only the vine from my property. I have Merlot at the top of the hill in Loupiac. I have some Merlot in Saint-Germain-au-Grave and in Cadillac. Okay. And I choose the very aromatic Merlot wines. We make a good structure, but easy to drink. What I look for this wine is to keep fresh aromas, and very tannin, but not too hard tannin.
Velvety tannin, a more approachable style of tannin.
Yes,
absolutely.
And I look for a typical Bordeaux, but a pleasure wine. To drink easy after sailing or
whatever your hobbies are, after tennis, after golf, after sailing. But it has a very suave, smooth, velvety mouthfeel, which is really attractive. And Merlot, unfortunately, you know, in the last 20 years, especially here in North America, got such a bad rap, which was really unfortunate because it makes such a balanced, approachable wine. And I often serve Merlot blind to people so that I won't have any preconceived notions. And it's just a grape that's so versatile when it comes to food pairing, that's so easy to approach, especially made in this style. With when you think about going back to the idea of blending in Bordeaux, often where Cabernet Sauvignon is dominant on the left bank, a lot of people use one of the main factors for adding Merlot is that it'll flesh out the more structured, tannic Cabernet Sauvignon. So seeing Merlot on its own as the star, really in that lovely, voluptuous, velvety style is really attractive.
Yeah.
In fact,
sorry. I opened the light because it's going to be dark.
It's nighttime in France, of course.
Yes.
What do
better like this?
What the people on the call? Does anybody want to comment on this, either the Sauvignon or the Merlot? Are you enjoying the wines? Is it how you imagined it would be? See if we can get a few volunteers from our audience today to share their thoughts. Got a quiet room today.
Yeah.
What would you pair this with while we're waiting to see if anybody wants to comment? What would you think would be a great pairing for this wine, food pairing?
In fact, Petite Marine is a wine range. You have the red with the Merlot,
yes,
the rosé with the Cabernet Franc,
and you have the rosé this year.
The rosé, oh yes, we have the rosé, and I tasted that when I was tasting Cellar 305. That's a fantastic one. Really, really easy drinking, bright, juicy, tangy fruit.
Yes.
And the goal was to create a wine really easy to drink with easy dishes, not complicate meal.
Yes.
Petite Marine is made for pleasure. It's a pleasure wine. It's not complicated, and certainly that's why, because Jean-Christophe decided to not create a blended wine, just the pure fruit of one grape variety. And most of the time, I like to enjoy it with pizza and watching, with football match at TV or boxing match and with friends. And yes, and furthermore, the labeling, in fact, is really enjoying. It's really fun. So for me, yes, it's an excellent wine for this type of a good moment with friends.
So you were talking about back to the single variety, having just Merlot, having just Cabernet Sauvignon, for example. What for you are the very classic Merlot aromas and flavors that you want to get across when you're bottling them as a single variety?
For me, the classic Merlot is good maturation of grapes.
Ripe, very ripe.
You don't have with Cabernet Sauvignon, sometimes you have a little fresh herb or things like this. For Merlot,
bell pepper, herbal.
Very good maturation. And very dark wine, blackcurrant, things like this. Yes. And it's fruits, black fruits, and some easy to you can eat the grapes of Merlot. It's very nice grapes to eat too. That's true. You don't think about it, but often wine grapes are not, surprisingly, not that pleasant to eat, whereas Merlot is. We have a couple comments coming in. Catherine says she enjoyed both your Sauvignon and your Merlot. And Connie was wondering what leaf means in the wine description chart. I'm not sure if we use leaf anymore. David, do you know what the leaf means in the wine description chart? I think when they put leafy in, what they mean is there's a herbal aspect to a wine. That's what I would assume.
but I might leave that one in the hands of David. And Jean-Paul says it's easy drinking, but not jammy. It could be a good food wine as well as a wine that you can sip on its own. I completely agree, Jean-Paul. I think this, if you chill it down just a teeny bit, you could easily drink this on its own, but also, as Chris said, extremely versatile for everyday dishes, pasta, steaks, pizza, just a very wide-ranging wine you can, crack open any night on your own with your friends over. It's just very easy, enjoyable, approachable style of wine. Fantastic. And so this is also, 20-year-old Merlot vines in clay soil. So Merlot loves clay soils, and Bordeaux gives a lovely broad, ample personality, mouthfeel to the wines. It's unoaked, I believe, 18 months of aging, but in tank, not in barrel, correct? Mm-hmm. So there as well, when you might be wondering why we're talking about the distinction of aging a wine in unoaked in stainless steel or in concrete rather than aging it in oak. And one of the reasons that a producer like Jean-Christophe would decide to do that is to really have more temperature control. And the lower you're fermenting, the more you can preserve very fruity, fresh aromas, which are volatile, meaning that they can burn off if the temperatures are too high or if there's too much oxygen. So if you really want to preserve a very fresh, bright fruited style, then you would choose to go more towards a neutral, inert vessel like stainless steel. Would you say that's an accurate description, Jean-Christophe?
Sorry.
I was just saying, explaining to, sometimes when we're talking about winemaking and wine lovers,
yes,
I
understand.
Why are they talking about different types of tank? But there's a reason behind it. And it really is to preserve, to make a certain style of wine. You're going to choose your vessel, your tank, your fermentation tank, and your aging tank accordingly. And the reason I was saying this is in stainless steel is really to preserve that bright, fresh.
Yes, I agree with you with Chateau Rouquette in Sauvignon Blanc and in Petit Marine. The aging in tank preserves the aromas and the fresh, and you can drink it very easy and earlier. For the Chateau Rouquette in Cadillac Côte de Bordeaux, the aging is making it on oak.
I think you just gave us a great segue to move on to the third wine. So this is the third wine that we're tasting today, the Chateau Rouquette. We had the white earlier. This is the red, and as you can see on the label, the origin is clearly mentioned, which is Cadillac Côte de Bordeaux. We talked about Lupiac earlier. Can you tell us a little bit about the appellation Cadillac?
Yes. The appellation Cadillac Côte de Bordeaux is all the plants you have on the right side of the river, the right side of the river.
The right side
it's
of
also
the
Bordeaux,
river.
Since Bordeaux, and it's all this side of the river. You have some hills. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting appellation, not well known, but very interesting. Mm-hmm. We just have finished.
Peux dire en français.
Yeah, une étude de terroir.
Oh, they're doing a terroir study.
Intéressantes.
They're doing a terroir study, which is really just looking at all the factors of landscape, geography, climate to really understand the site better.
And we find very interesting ground. And we used to make on this ground some very, very good wine and some of the best wine in Bordeaux.
Okay.
And our syndicat begin to communicate about this terroir.
Okay.
With very special terroir.
It's quite gravelly.
We do Cadillac Côte de Bordeaux since all the time, and we do very interesting red. 20 years ago, it was Première Côte de Bordeaux.
Yes.
Cadillac Côte de Bordeaux.
Yeah.
And we chose to change the name in 2008.
Which is wonderful because now it really is distinguished more. It's set apart from just a much larger appellation. You get a sense of the place much better. And so Cadillac, you were talking about very interesting terroir. So this is quite gravelly soils?
Yes, it's a gravelly soil and just more gravelly than in Lupiac.
Okay. And the gravelly soils, obviously very good for Cabernet Sauvignon. We were talking about clay soils. Merlot loves clay soils. And gravelly soils, great for Cabernet Sauvignon. They really dig deep into the soils in the gravels.
We have some argile too, and we have some Merlot too.
Okay, so there's clay soil, areas with more clay soils where Merlot is planted, and areas with more gravelly where they've got more Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yes, and I think the mixed is more than Merlot than Cabernet Sauvignon.
Okay, so it's a Merlot Cabernet
this wine is 80% Merlot and 20 Cabernet Sauvignon. But I used to put new plants of Cabernet Sauvignon, and I hope in 3 or 5 years I have nearly 30% of Cabernet Sauvignon and 70 of Merlot.
Okay, so it's going to, as the vines mature, the range will change.
So because of the climate is warmer, and with a warmer climate, Cabernet Sauvignon is more interesting.
Absolutely. So one of the problems in the past, and one of the reasons we had a lot of leafy, herbal, bell pepper type notes in a lot of Cabernet Sauvignons is Cabernet Sauvignon is a grape that needs a long growing season. It ripens later in the fall, and you could in the past there were in certain areas of Bordeaux problems where the temperatures would get too cool, so the grapes were often picked when they weren't perfectly ripe in terms of their aromatic profile. I mean, it depends. There's some people that like the leafier style. When you pick is very personal to the style you want to make, but with the warming temperatures overall, Cabernet Sauvignon in a lot of areas where it didn't used to do so well is now really flourishing.
And very interesting wine of Cabernet Sauvignon, but you can't put Cabernet Sauvignon everywhere in Bordeaux. No. But in terroir of Cadillac-Côte de Bordeaux, I have some very nice Cabernet Sauvignon.
Wonderful. And this is a blend. And another thing I think is lovely about this wine is I think I was reading it's a 30 that on average the vines are 30 years old or more.
Yes, the vines, yes, it did between 30 and 40 years old. The Merlot. The Cabernet Sauvignon are younger, 25, 30 years old. But the Merlot is nearly 40 years old.
And that's another factor that's really interesting, I think, about these wines is these older vines that are giving you just a little bit more, often with older vines, you can get more concentration. They're not quite as productive. They're not quite as vigorous as a younger vine. And you often have more concentration in the flavors coming from the grapes in older vines. So this is another plus for this Chateau de Rouquette Red Merlot Cabernet Sauvignon blend. And as you were mentioning earlier, this is oak aged wine, 24 months, I believe. Aging in not all new though, in slightly older barrels, so that the oak imprint is there but not too dominant. And I feel like it's very balanced on the nose.
Yeah.
Barrels is just a support.
Yes.
Jean-Christophe won't preserve the fruit and the fruity sensation. In fact, we use part of used barrel and part of new, and it's very interesting because we have just a vanilla hint, but it's not toasted.
And it's an undertone. It's not overtaking the fruit in any way. It's just, as you say, there's a perfect word. It's the support. It really is just adding complexity and not dominating. And in that case, it's really bringing a lot to the wine. And this is, of course, 2019, which was such an amazing vintage in Bordeaux. Can you just tell us a little bit about 2019, the style of wines that you saw from that vintage?
2019 is very interesting vintage. We have grapes who are a good maturation for Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon, and we have a good aging. We keep some good concentration too, and we begin the picking breaks in September without raining, and we have a good in good place.
Yeah, everything is just so balanced in 2019. You have lovely ripeness, but not over ripeness. I think one of our guests earlier were saying, oh, the wine's not jammy. Jean-Paul was saying that about the Petite Marine. I think it's the same case with this. 2019, you had a lot of ripeness, but not over ripeness.
Yes.
You still had a lovely structure to the tannins, but they're present, but they're also have a lovely ripeness to them, and just still a lot of freshness. I think during the harvest, the nights were starting to get cooler, so you were able to maintain really lovely balance in the freshness of the wine. So this is definitely.
I agree. You keep a lot of fresh in this wine too.
And this is a wine that you can already, I think it's drinking beautifully, but you could easily keep this. How long would you recommend if somebody wanted to cellar this for a few more years? How long do you think it could keep?
I think you can keep it between 5 or 10 years old.
Okay. So there you are, but already drinking so nice.
Today is good to drink, but if you can wait, it will be better.
Yeah, those tannins will have a chance to integrate even more into the wine. You start having some interesting, what we call tertiary notes, the notes of aromas that come with age, that start to develop and mingle with the fruit and bring even more complexity to the wine, which is so nice. Connie was wondering, what would you recommend for food pairings for this last wine, the Château de Rouquette Côte de Cadillac?
It deserves something special like lambs. Lambs with Cadillac is often really perfect. Okay. You can try with chicken, but lambs and this type of meat is really suitable for this type of wine. Certainly because tannins is really smooth, and beef will be certainly too much for this type of wine.
Okay.
Chicken, lambs, it's okay.
And if anybody is vegetarian and they still want to enjoy this wine, you would want to pick a heartier, maybe vegetable. You would want to pick something, you know, in the root vegetable family, something earthy, maybe mushrooms, aubergine. These style of roasted vegetables could be interesting. A dish with lentils, something like that. You want something reasonably hearty to go if you were looking for a vegetarian pairing for a wine like this.
And with cheese will be nice too.
Of course. This is a fantastic wine, especially I would say probably with hard cheeses, but more than soft, maybe both.
Yeah. Saint-Nectaire. I don't know if you know Saint-Nectaire in Canada.
It's not as easily. That's a cheese from Auvergne. I'm not sure if many people. It's my husband's family's from Auvergne, so we do eat a lot of stuff. But it's not widely imported into Canada.
And you can try with goat cheese, but not too powerful.
Right.
Yes. Choose medium or fresh. Yeah.
Okay, that's
really. I tried during my dinner.
There you are.
I made a test, in fact. And yes, it was really good. In fact, to say the truth, the cheese disappeared.
That's always a good sign.
Yeah.
But I just love the fact that these three wines are all very classic. So three different, what's Petite Marine, which is the vintage that we're 2020. So three different vintages, recent vintages, 19, 20, 21, all very classic expressions of Bordeaux, but all really approachable, really lovely drinking, open wines, as you say. A lot of balance, great freshness, but ripe fruit aromas, never too herbal, no bitterness, nothing that, you know, I feel that you've really done a wonderful job having just such a lovely, balanced, fresh style. Unfortunately, in English, there's just no great translation for a wonderful word in French for saying a wine is digeste, which all three of them are. So this is a wonderful French term, meaning that the wines are just they've got wonderful bright acidity, but not too much. And they are just basically easy to digest, but we just don't have a romantic term for that. That sounds nice in English, but basically means wines that are balanced, that are not too heavy, they're not overpowering. Jean-Paul would like to know, is the sweet wine in the catalog? Is there one of your sweet wines in the catalog? I think you said it was.
Yes, I do sweet wine in Cadillac, but I propose the Lupiac in sweet wine, only for opinion selection.
David, do you know what the
next
catalog
year,
number
perhaps,
is?
if you want, you can have Cadillac in sweet wine if you want to.
Oh, there you go. Suggestion. So I think David, if you could, he's looking that up for you, Jean-Paul. That's perfect. And a question that we always love to ask, and maybe the members already know this and I don't, but is there a possibility for people, if they were traveling through Bordeaux, to come and taste at Chateau de Rouquette or any of your other estates?
Yes, of course. You're welcome at Chateau de Rouquette. And if you want to travel, last year, you have a group of Opinion members.
You did? Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
We have a lunch in the cellar.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
And you have tested different wine.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. So maybe some of you were already on that.
You have to look for the year of one year, all the wine you have a test last year.
Oh, wow. So was anybody who's on the call today on that trip a year ago? See if anybody who's with us today has anybody been to Bordeaux? Pardon? Oh, we got a quiet audience today. Well, then anybody who's on the call today, you can make it onto the next trip to go and visit Jean-Christophe in Cadillac and in Loupiac.
If some member want to come in Bordeaux and to visit us, it's a pleasure to receive you.
And you have so many. I mean, we've just tasted a very small part of your range today. You have such a diverse collection of wines for people to try. And I think three very emblematic, as we were saying, of your wines. You've also got your sweet wines, your rosé from the Petite Marine, that is really, for this summer, is just dangerously drinkable rosé. Wonderful wine. And it's also nice, I think, to remember that there is rosé in the world outside of Côte de Provence. As much as we love Côte de Provence rosé, Bordeaux has been making beautiful rosé for hundreds and hundreds of years. The term clairé, light, basically pale wine, came from Bordeaux. So the tradition of rosé winemaking is not exclusive to the southeast of France. Definitely give Bordeaux rosés a try. I think you'll enjoy them. Jean-Paul says he was in Bordeaux last fall, and he fell in love with Sauternes. So if you love Sauternes, Loupiac has the same phenomenon of that mist that's creating that noble rot effect, the botrytis on the grapes, and exactly botrytis. That's creating that same concentrated, honeyed, sweet dessert wines. So definitely try Loupiac if you enjoy Sauternes. So,
but it's very interesting to test sweet wines like Loupiac and Cadillac, like Sauternes, in aperitif too.
That's a great point.
Cheese.
With cheese, okay.
Cheese, with Roquefort.
I think a lot of people forget about that. They assume it's going to be a dessert wine, and then when you get to the dessert at the end of a big meal with wine, you almost don't feel like having.
Don't say dessert wine, please.
There you are. Okay, so that's a great way to think about it separately. Stop calling it dessert wine, and then you remember that you can have it at any point during the meal. It's a wonderful point. So try, there you go. If anybody has a bottle of Loupiac at home, or any of the sweet, not dessert wines from Bordeaux, give them a try, chilled for the entree. What would you serve it? You said you could serve it with cheese, but if you were having it as an aperitif or as maybe with an entree, what would you serve it with? What sort of?
In fact, when we have a guest and visitor at the winery, often we make a little cocktail, really easy to do. Just a slice of orange, really thin, ice cube, and Loupiac. And orange will exhaust the aromas of the wine. It's incredible because originally, Chateau Dauphiné-Rondillon from Loupiac is really aromatic because old Sémillon grape trees. But with orange slice, it's something amazing. You have to test.
So you slice a thin slice of orange and you put it in the glass with the ice cubes and the Loupiac.
And that's all.
Okay. There you are. Little summer cocktail you can make at home. I think a lot of people feel like a sweet wine is going to be overpowering. It's going to be too sweet. They're not going to enjoy it. But I hear that all the time, and it makes me laugh because the same people that say that to me have no problem drinking juice or drinking Coca-Cola. So we sometimes think it's going to be sweeter than it really is. And if you pair it with the right thing, you can find that they really do have such an interesting place in the world of wines, and definitely a good idea to rediscover the sweet wines. And often they come in half bottles, so you don't necessarily have to commit to an enormous quantity. You can try a half bottle of a sweet wine and get back into the drinking these styles of wines that are such complex, interesting wines.
Yeah, we had a big journey in United States a few weeks ago where we presented different wines from Darriet winery, included Château de Rouquette Loupiac.
Okay.
And we tried this wine with seafoods, Japanese food as sushi, and
interesting.
Yeah, and of course some cheese coming from United States. So some of them are really strange, but we had to test. And each time it was a good surprise. It's just a question of balance. Choose the good food pairing with this type of wine is not easy. And we tried sometime with Chinese food as roasted duck with honey.
Okay, roasted duck with honey. Okay.
Yeah, could be interesting too, Chinese food.
Yeah. A good rule of thumb is just to make sure that the wine is always slightly sweeter than the food. If you're serving a dessert or even a honeyed dish, main dish, that's sweeter than the wine, then the wine is gonna come across a bit flabby, a bit lacking in energy and vibrancy. So always make sure when you're pairing sweet wine with foods that the sweet wine is sweeter than the food you're pairing it with. And there are such wide range of options. And spicy food is a great thing to mention, because the sweetness, I mean, if you've ever been eating Indian food, for example, you often get given a mango chutney, for example, and the sweetness of that chutney, its purpose on the side of your dish is to soften that spice. And so a sweet wine can do exactly that for you with those spicy dishes. So it can be a great pair. You don't want the spice to be too strong and to overpower your palate, but lightly spiced dishes with sweet wines, just beautiful. We have a couple minutes left in the call with our guests here who've taken away from their pre-dinner hour to be with us this evening. Does anybody have any questions for Jean-Christophe or Chris about the wines, about Bordeaux, about wine pairings, the wines coming up in Cellar 305, anything at all? See if anybody's got any questions for us. No. In the meantime, thank you so much for sharing these three wines with us today. They're really fantastic. I don't know if everybody opened all three bottles, but I think as the nice weather's coming through, we shouldn't have any problem, especially with this Sauvignon Blanc. This for an aperitif is just perfect for this type of weather.
Thank you, Jean-Paul.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure to speak about my winery and my wine this night. And no problem, we arrive. We are here to receive you if you come in France. You're welcome in Loupiac, in Château de Rouquette.
You should definitely take Jean-Christophe up on that. I think I might. Thank you so much, everybody. David, do you want to just remind, I think you already wrote everything that's available for Cellar 305. You have till June 5th, I think.
June 5th, Cellar closes June 5th. And just one question for you, Jean-Christophe. You created some wines that are on page 30 and 31 of the Cellar.
Yeah,
cool.
It's blurry on my end, so I hope it's coming through a little on your end. These are some delicious red and whites that you've created exclusively for Opimian. Can you tell us a little bit about just the red and whites?
Yes, of course. I look for, like the Petite Marine was different grape from different parts of the property. For the selection of Pignam in red and it white is only grapes who came from Château de Rouquette.
Okay.
From the area of Château de Rouquette. For the white, I selection some very good Sauvignon on the year 2022. and to have very expressive and very easy to drink wine. In the same feeling, to have a wine, you can taste it. You have expressive aromatic wine with a lot of pleasure wine, but easy to drink. The same thing is with the red. We have mostly Merlot, but we have some Cabernet Sauvignon too in the mixed. And it's a wine very fruity, easy to drink, not too much tannin, but good concentration too.
In fact,
on these two wine, you have this in a big bottle or little bottle, depending on the number of people you are here.
Perfect. It's nice to have small formats. That's something you don't see a lot of, and people, if they're opening a bottle by themselves, it's nice to also have that option. And then a Magnum is also a wonderful format for celebration, great format to age wine in as well, larger formats like that. So fantastic.
Yes. And you have the 2020 on the Chateau d'Rouquette in Cadillac de Bordeaux.
Yeah, that's tasting really, really well.
Yes,
When
we have 1 year ago.
tasting.
And 2019 was a very good year, very equilibrium. 2020 is a drier year and more concentration, but interesting too.
Wonderful. Okay, well, it'll be interesting.
You're
Anybody has any of the 19 left to buy the 2020 and then taste them side by side, that could be a really interesting exercise to do. Cool.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. And see you soon. No problem. You have something to say, Christophe, or no?
No, for me, all is okay. Just maybe a word about Opimiam wine selection with Chateau de Rouquette. When we created with Jean-Christophe, we was inspired by the previous success. Chateau de Rouquette is in catalog Opimiam since a long time. And when we had to create this new wine range, we decided to think what we can do more, better. And it was really challenging because Chateau de Rouquette is, some people say to me, it's an old style. And I used to answer, no, it's traditional. It's not old style. And maybe Opimiam selection, yes, it's not traditional. It's a new style. It's a new way to enjoy red and white dry Sauvignon. It's really fleshy, juicy, crunchy, and it's an immediate pleasure. It was the way we decided to choose when we created this new wine range exclusive for Opimiam.
Fantastic. Looking forward to trying it. Well, thank you, everybody, so much. I don't know if you had any parting words, David, before we let everybody get on their way.
No, thank you, and enjoy the sunshine if you have it, and warm weather outside today. And merci, Jean-Christophe. Merci, Christophe.
Thank you very much. Now it's the night here in Bordeaux.
Well, enjoy your evening. Thank you so much, everybody. And
thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Merci beaucoup.